people, the most fertile source of information during the course of any investigation. In police work, they are usually typed as complainant, witness, informant, subject, or suspect. But as human beings, they almost defy classification. Many factors make one person different from another. Character, perhaps, or education and interests, age, family background and position, physical condition, and emotional stability are but a few of the other elements that shape personality. And because people are different, their attitudes and behavior vary greatly. No two people can be expected to act or react exactly alike. Each is an individual problem that the interviewer must face and solve.
How's it going, Joe?
Oh, fine, Mr. Miller. Just fine.
Good. We're glad you came over with us. I want you to know that we're well aware of the fact that Empire's loss is our game.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You know, Mr. Miller, as I get older, I weigh things more. But you want to know one thing? I'm not too old to act once I make up my mind.
Fine, fine. How's this job coming along, Joe?
They're measuring out very well.
From this part of the conversation, and from the minute or so you've had to observe Joe Quillen, you've learned something about him. But let's say that you didn't have this advantage, and you were meeting him for the first time. How would you size him up? What conclusions would you reach as to his type? What methods would you employ which might encourage him to cooperate with you in your investigation? Interviewing is the most frequently used, the most important information gathering technique available to the law enforcement officer in investigations. The successful solution of a criminal case depends more often on the completeness and accuracy of information gained in this way than through any other means. But interviewing is not an exact science. So we can't say, here is the formula, apply it, and you'll get the facts you seek. However, there are guidelines. Follow them conscientiously, and you'll enhance your chance of success. First of all, know your case thoroughly and what data you need to complete the picture. Whenever possible, ascertain the background of the person you're going to interview, his education, reputation, criminal record, and the like. In the process, don't overlook common sources of information. The city directory is an example. Here you'll probably find name, address, occupation, employer, wife's name, and her employer. During the course of your conversation with an interviewee, you might find an occasion to slip in a revealing fact or two. He might then assume that you know more than you actually do. If it will help, write down reminders and points you want to cover. This could give you a decided advantage. An interview is a conversation with a purpose, so prepare yourself in any way you can to accomplish it. When the moment has come for a face-to-face meeting, you must rely on your knowledge of human nature and be guided by whatever you encounter. Your first consideration is your introduction. The person you're going to interview has the right to know to whom he is speaking. This includes, as a general rule, knowledge of your official position.
Good afternoon, sir. Mr. Quillen?
Yes. What can I do for you?
Mr. Quillen, my name is George Booth. I'm a special agent of the FBI.
Well, you want me?
Well, only in a matter of speaking, Mr. Quillen. I think you may be able to help me in a matter we're investigating.
I guess that did sound sort of funny, didn't it? Come in, Mr. Booth. Come in.
Thank you.
The introduction is important in establishing a favorable climate for a productive interview. People who feel well disposed to you are more apt to tell you things willingly. Develop an atmosphere of mutual respect, trust, and friendliness. Avoid any words or actions which might have a tendency to frighten, embarrass, or ridicule the person to be interviewed. When you've established an easy, relaxed atmosphere, state the purpose of your inquiry without volunteering information unnecessarily.
Well, I agree. I think she does. Well, Mr. Quillen, I wanted to ask you about a subject on which I know you're well qualified to speak. You were employed at the Empire Manufacturing Company until about a month ago, weren't you?
Yes, I was. But I quit.
Do you mind telling me why you left?
I got a line on a better job.
Tell me, Mr. Quillen, did your leaving have anything to do with a change in quality of Empire's production standards on the parts they were making under government contract?
No. Not exactly.
Oh? As a matter of fact, I thought that was why you left. I'm investigating an alleged fraud in connection with those machine parts. And Charlie Sontag told me that you had quit because you wanted no part of that kind of cheating.
We'd better stop the interview right here. Agent Booth has made an error. He has revealed information he should not have revealed. And Joe Quillen's reaction could have an adverse effect on the interview. Joe Quillen might very well say to himself, I'd better watch what I say. If this fellow goes around telling people what Charlie Sontag said, he'll probably repeat what I tell him. Let's back up a bit and do that part over. More artfully this time.
Tell me, Mr. Quillen, did your leaving have anything to do with a change in quality of Empire's production standards on the parts they were making under government contract?
No. Not exactly.
Well, Mr. Quillen, I felt that a master machinist of your reputation and a man who's obviously a responsible citizen would rather leave than be a party to the turning out of inferior products.
Well, I did feel that the quality of the metal they were giving us to work with had gone down. I figured that the company could not be in too stable a position if they were cutting expenses that way.
Did you feel that these inferior metals wouldn't hold up in actual use?
I was afraid they wouldn't. Now, mind you, I never saw the specifications. But I doubt that the government would permit that kind of metal for a part that would be subject to so much strain. You know, Mr. Booth, that particular connection was subject to thousands of pounds of pressure.
Now progress is being made. Mr. Booth is apparently about to get the information he seeks from Mr. Quillen. So let's leave it at that. This is Whitey Moore, 16 years old, a school dropout. He places little value on education, but a great deal on wealth. Right now, he has a get-rich-quick scheme, which is not very original.
Man, I bet I could get $3 grand for this heap. Bet you could get 20 years, Whitey. Ah, nuts. Look, it's simple. The guy isn't coming for this thing until 5 o'clock, and by that time I could be on my way to California. You cross the state line and you get a federal rap. Who says so? Look, I just tell him that the guy asked me to take it to California, sell it, and send back the dough. And you think they'll believe that? Why not? It's my word against the guy's, and he's a real creep. Listen, Whitey, you just can't win. Once they got the screws on you, man, you're dead. So send me flowers.
One aspect of Whitey's plan worked. He did get to California. About everything else, he was wrong. And his friend was wrong, too. Whitey is not having the screws put on him, nor is he being subjected to anything that remotely resembles the third degree. As a matter of fact, he is being advised at the moment that he does not have to say anything, that anything he does say may be used against him in court, and that he has the right to a lawyer.
So I don't have to talk, right?
That's right. But it's clear that you have a problem, and perhaps I can help you.
Nuts. I ain't got no problem.
Well, let's talk about it a bit.
Everybody wants to talk to me. I ain't got nothing to say.
When did you first come to town, Whitey?
2 days ago. Now, what's that got to do with anything?
This is your first trip to California, isn't it?
Yeah. So what?
Why don't you come out here to get a job or something?
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
What kind of work can you do?
Mechanical, you know, shop work. I'm pretty good with my hands.
Have you had much experience in those kind of jobs?
Sure. Working around garages and places like that back home.
The agent here doesn't seem to be in a hurry to get to the facts of the car theft. And for good reason. He wants to gain the boy's confidence first. He hopes to do this by asking questions which reflect his interest in the boy.
When did you first decide to come to California?
I've been thinking about it for a couple of years. I mean, I didn't like school, so I decided to go out on my own and get a job. You know how it is.
Oh, sure. I can understand that, Whitey. And there are plenty of good jobs to be had out here, but at your age, you'd need a permit first.
You trying to tell me that a guy who's willing to work has to get some kind of permission?
Yes. If you're only 16.
Well, where do I go? Who do I see? I mean, I'm not going to just sit around.
Well, you might be able to check into that later, Whitey. But first, let's look into the matter of this automobile.
What about the automobile?
Suppose you tell me how you happen to be driving this new car.
Like I told the cops, this guy loaned it to me so I could get to California. And then he told me to sell it and send back the money.
Knock it off, Whitey. Don't lie to me. You stole it, didn't you?
With that harsh demand for the truth, the interviewer stepped out of character. An overly aggressive, threatening attitude can only result in resentment and resistance. The interviewer, who is firm but fair, friendly and interested, methodical and thorough, will get further. All right, Whitey is sticking to his story. Let's see how the interviewer goes about breaking it down.
Now, just a minute, Whitey. When you say he loaned it to you, I think you mean you got it from the car wash where he was having it washed. Now, isn't that the way it was?
You know about that?
Yes, I know. Have you ever taken any other cars?
No, and I didn't steal this one either.
Well, Whitey, let's put it this way. You wanted to come to California. That's understandable. You didn't have enough money to come by bus or train. Probably you thought of hitchhiking. But you decided to take the car instead. Now, let's say you took it without permission. That's where you made a mistake, didn't you?
Well, I was going to send him the money.
Oh, Whitey, now you know you couldn't have sold that car.
What do they do to you? I mean, how many years do you get for stealing cars? 20?
That's up to the judge. He considers your record, conduct, and attitude, then makes his decision.
Oh, if I talk, will you promise to get me probation?
There's nothing I can do about that, Whitey. I don't have the authority to promise you anything. Suppose you tell me exactly what happened.
Okay.
The interviewer allows Whitey to furnish details of the theft. As he talks freely, his words are jotted down in a casual manner. Although notes may be taken without difficulty in most interviews, care must be taken with those few interviewees who may freeze at the sight of the interviewer's pencil and pad. In such cases, note-taking at the time of the interview may be dispensed with and postponed to the earliest possible moment. When information is received of particular value, such as an acknowledgement of guilt by the subject of the investigation, consideration should always be given to reducing it to the form of a signed statement of either the narrative or question and answer type. This will give the subject the opportunity to review what he has orally stated and acknowledged it to be true, complete, and correct by his signature or in some other way. This is Ann Finley. She's been at the same window for 10 years. She knows her steady customers by name and can give you complete description of their banking habits. In a few seconds, she'll have something else to remember.
In a month, Ann. I'll be looking for you, Mrs. Guilford. Yes, sir.
Lady, I've got a gun. Don't say anything and don't push any buttons. Take it easy. You're doing just fine now. Pick up all your bills and put them inside the bag. Move, lady. Move!
I've been held up. I've been held up.
Since memory is short, it's basic that you conduct interviews with witnesses, suspects, and subjects as soon as possible after the act in question. Passing time not only dulls the memory, but it allows a person's imagination to exert its influence. And, too, In the interval, a person's own account of what happened might be colored by what he hears from others. First, give the person a chance to tell the story in his own words. Don't interrupt unless it's absolutely necessary for purposes of clarification. During the question period which follows, have a reason for every question you ask. Observe the physical reactions of interviewees. Listen carefully and evaluate his answers critically. If his answers contain unusual words, slang terms, or are evasive, clarify what is meant by further questioning. In short, keep probing.
Mrs. Finley, when did you first observe this robber?
When he was behind Mrs. Gilchrist.
How old was he?
Oh, he wasn't old. Let me think. 25, 30.
How tall was he?
He didn't look tall. Somewhere around my height, I think. I'm 5'6". No, he wasn't tall at all.
What was he wearing?
Wearing? What was he wearing? Oh, my goodness.
Was he wearing a brown sport coat and dark brown pants?
Up until this point, the interviewer has phrased his questions properly. But this last was a leading question. Many people will accept the suggestion without reflecting and answering from their own memory. You must be particularly careful when dealing with people who are in a state of excitement. They may be grateful for the opportunity to echo the words you put in their mouths. In this instance, it would be better to handle a lapse of memory this way.
It's all right, Mrs. Finley. I realize it's very difficult to recall everything when something like this has happened.
Oh, yes, it is. It really is. But I'm all right now. Honest, I am.
Good.
Now, about what he was wearing. Did I mention the cap?
No, you didn't.
Well, it was a tan cap. And he had on a blue jacket. And his shirt was white, open at the collar. That's all I could see of him.
Good. Now,
You know, when you just asked me about him, all I could see was a blur, and then suddenly I remembered noticing him standing behind Mrs. Gilchrist.
in your opinion, Mrs. Finley, what kind of work did he follow?
Some kind of outdoor work, I'd say. Construction work. His hands, you know, they looked very rough looking.
What did he say to you?
Well, he said he had a gun. And then he shoved a bag across the counter, and he told me to take out my bills and fill it. I tell you, I almost fainted. I was all thumbs, and he didn't like it at all. Good heavens, I was trying to hurry.
Did you see the gun? He didn't swear at you or threaten you with any bodily harm if you wouldn't comply with his instructions?
The interviewer here, anxious perhaps to fill in the gaps in Anne Finley's story, has not only asked a leading question, but a compound question as well. Compound questions are ambiguous. They lead to ambiguous answers. If Anne answers yes, having in mind only one part of the question, the interviewer may assume that she is assenting to the entire question. It is far better to ask one thing at a time and frame your questions in a positive way. This way.
Did he say anything else to you?
Not that I remember.
Was there anything unusual about his speech?
No, except that he had a rough way about him.
What kind of a gun did he have, Mrs. Finley?
I didn't see it. He just told me he had one.
Well, now, after he left your window, did you see anybody else join him?
I didn't see anything. I just about collapsed. Wait a minute. I did see someone. There was a man. While I was talking with Mrs. Gilchrist, there was a man, and he was making out a deposit slip, and he kept looking in my direction.
Yes, these are the people. The Ann Finleys, the Whitey Moores, the Joe Quillens. All kinds of people. Cooperative and uncooperative. Closed-mouthed, wordy, predictable and unpredictable. You'll face many of them sooner or later. So what about you? How do you stack up as a member of society? Sincere, courteous, decent, sensitive, understanding, frank? Are you persistent, patient, analytical, flexible, and cautious? Are you a practical psychologist, self-assured and professional? These are the attributes of the skillful interviewer, and they can be acquired by study, practice, and hard work. Remember, there is no law that compels a person to talk, yet he must be properly persuaded to talk if evidence is to be gathered, if justice is to be served. And that's your job.